All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Greetings, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you're joining from. We're glad to have you here for this webinar on sustainable human-animal interactions. This webinar is the third in a series of webinars, Voices from the Afforestation Frontlines, Advancing Sustainable Solutions for a Resilient Planet. This series has been organized by Friends of the Saskatoon Afforestation Areas in partnership with the United Nations Environment Program, Juventud Unida en Acción, Animal People, and other groups. This series leads up to the United Nations Environment Assembly in December. Its objectives are to raise awareness of the importance of afforestation, biodiversity, and ethical human-animal relationships, to foster cross-sector learning, provide a platform for community-driven strategies that align with UNEA 7's agenda for sustainable, inclusive, and equitable environmental action, and to contribute insights and recommendations that can inform global conversations and policies emerging from UNEA 7. This webinar, as you know, is dedicated to the topic of sustainable human-animal interactions. Before we get into it, Julia, would you like to play the land acknowledgement, please?
Sure. The Global Traditional Land Acknowledgement. As we gather virtually from many places across the world, we acknowledge the lands, waters, and skies that sustain us. Being connected to the land and the gifts it provides is a grounding part of our relationships with Mother Earth. In gratitude, we honor the sacred waters, grasslands, forests, biodiversity, and skies that inspire our shared journey. In the spirit of reconciliation, right relations are enhanced by learning from Indigenous worldviews, including Wakatowan, a Cree word from the Nahiawak that reminds us of the kinship and interconnectedness of all people, communities, and natural systems. Guided by this teaching, we come together to walk with respect, reciprocity, and responsibility toward the earth and one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. May I also ask to temporarily make you the host so you can bring people in from the waiting room while I'm presenting?
Yes, that would be fine.
Thank you, Julia. All right. To start this webinar on today's topic, I will begin by presenting a high-level overview of the subject, animal sentience, animal welfare, and biodiversity, and then we will begin with our panel presentations. So I have a slideshow to share. First, I will go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Wolf Gordon Clifton. I am the executive director of the nonprofit animal protection organization, Animal People. I have been working in this capacity for over 10 years now. Among my other qualifications, I have a Master of Science degree in geological science, along with certificates in conservation biology and astrobiology. And I'm currently doing my PhD in theology and ethics at the Graduate Theological Union, focusing on Hindu and Buddhist perspectives and practices pertaining to ecology and animal protection. I would like to dedicate this talk to the memory of Dr. Dame Jane Goodall, who everyone here will probably know passed away recently. Jane Goodall was a trailblazer, I would say a saint for the cause of animal and environmental protection. not only in changing scientific thinking on animal intelligence, but also leading the way with her tireless activism on behalf of other living creatures and on behalf of human society in finding more sustainable ways to live with the living world. Jane Goodall came to fame with her discovery in 1960 that wild chimpanzees make and use tools. This was at the time considered a radical discovery because it was widely considered that tool use, and in fact, may I ask whoever is unmuted to please mute yourself? Thank you. This was considered radical because at the time of this discovery, tool use, along with most forms of higher intelligence and even such basic capacities as the ability to feel pain or distress, were widely considered unique to humans. So the discovery that even our closest relatives within the animal kingdom could use tools was considered so revolutionary that Jane Goodall's supervisor, the anthropologist Louis Leakey, remarked, "Now we must redefine tool, redefine man, or accept chimpanzees as humans." Well, one wonders what Louis Leakey would have said had he found out that fish can use tools, as can some insects. This is a tuskfish. Tuskfish will use stones to break open the shells, the bivalves that they prey on, while tree crickets will actually modify the shape of leaves to amplify their mating calls. But this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we now know non-human animals are capable of. Abstract thought and reasoning, which have also classically been thought of as uniquely human capacities, also are widespread, from basic numerical and mathematical abilities in creatures from mice to parrots, to forms of pattern recognition in creatures as distant from us as honeybees. Social intelligence is also very widespread. We have capacities such as facial recognition, social hierarchies, the ability to understand the emotions of other creatures, even to show altruism, as has been seen in vampire bats, and capacities to communicate and cooperate in hunting across species, which have been seen between octopuses and various forms of fish, and even forms of communication that approach human language in complexity. Perhaps most significant to ethical concerns, it's now generally accepted in the scientific community that consciousness and sentience are widespread throughout the animal kingdom, these being closely linked but subtly different concepts. Consciousness referring to the capacity for subjective experience, and sentience referring to literally the capacity to sense the world around us, but beyond that, also to experience either suffering or well-being. This leads us to the very weighty issue of animal suffering. Whereas it was once thought that animal cries in pain were purely a mechanical response, we now know that the capacity to suffer pain is widespread not only among all vertebrate animals, but even in many invertebrates as well, including cephalopods, many insects, crustaceans, and others. And psychological distress, too, is now well known. To give just a couple of examples, signs of trauma and PTSD have been observed in domesticated cows and in chickadees. All in all, what this leads to is a reevaluation of the moral significance of non-human life. Whereas it has long been standard thinking, as I said, in Western science until recent decades, and in law and policy, that humans alone are moral agents, that human life alone has intrinsic value, and that other creatures and the natural world exist purely for our own use. The recognition of intelligence, sentience, social relationships in creatures besides Homo sapiens reminds us what has been for thousands of years traditional wisdom in spiritual and cultural traditions around the world, that humans are part of a community of life with whom we have not only relationships, but reciprocal responsibilities, and that the world as a whole, landscapes, ecosystems, have moral value. I'll lead now into the second part of my presentation, which is to explain the concept of biological diversity and threats to biodiversity. So this first question is, what is biodiversity? In a nutshell, this refers simply to the variety of kinds of life. This can be measured in different ways. The most common in law and policy is species diversity. How many species are present? This is also called alpha diversity, but the variation in the kinds of living things that are found between one ecosystem and another, one place and another, is also an important aspect of biodiversity, as are things like functional diversity, which is the range of ecological niches being filled, and so on. We are now living in the midst of a biodiversity crisis, which has been widely referred to as the sixth mass extinction, acknowledging the fact that species are currently believed to be going extinct at a rate faster than has been seen any time in the last 65 million years since the mass extinction that killed off the dinosaurs. Except that the present biodiversity crisis is caused by one living species, that being Homo sapiens, us. An important study which has influenced UN policy, including the current Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, found that there are 5 major drivers of biodiversity loss. These include the direct exploitation of biodiversity of living creatures, which is often thought of in terms of poaching, in terms of the illegal trade, capture, hunting of non-human animals, but also includes legal trades, which can be problematic in themselves. For example, providing cover for illegally sourced products, driving up demand, and simply not being adequately regulated, as is seen, for example, in commercial fishing, which poses various threats to marine biodiversity, and in the pet trade, which is, of course, can involve terrible animal suffering, but is also a major driver for the spread of invasive species into places where they are not native. Land and sea use change is the single largest driver of biodiversity loss in land ecosystems, and is disproportionately impacted by the spread of the expansion of agriculture, particularly animal agriculture, which is disproportionately intensive in terms of the land required, the water, and other requirements relative to the calories and protein that it generates. Crop monocultures are also highly problematic, whether for human consumption, whether for livestock feed, or for their use in biofuel production. The spread of monocultures, which unlike natural forests, consist of just a single species of plant, and therefore don't support overall biodiversity. This is a serious driver of biodiversity loss in and of itself. We have pollution, which can take the forms of plastic pollution, the runoff of pesticides and agricultural waste into marine ecosystems, as well as pharmaceutical waste, which can also have devastating effects on animal health and has been a major factor in the endangerment of various species, including the European eel, being one of the most striking examples. Climate change, which is impactful around the world, but is especially harmful to marine and polar biodiversity, whereas overall climate change is only the fourth largest driver of biodiversity loss presently. In marine ecosystems, in the oceans, it's the second largest. And it also has disproportionate effects on ecosystems in the Arctic and Antarctic. Climate change, like land change, is driven largely by animal agriculture. And finally, invasive species. That is the introduction of non-native creatures into ecosystems where they are not naturally present, which can, in some cases, have a very destabilizing impact on other species and on the ecosystem. Prevention has to be the first priority because once invasive populations become established, they are very hard to eradicate. And doing so can present ethical dilemmas in terms of how do you balance the welfare considerations, the value, the capacity to suffer in animals belonging to invasive species with the importance of the other creatures in an ecosystem with the health of the ecosystem overall. This can create issues, and it has created conflict between conservationists and animal welfare advocates. You'll see I have a very extensive bibliography. You're welcome to take screenshots, or you can just ask me to share this. My presentation will be available in the recording. And with that, I am going to stop sharing, and I will ask our first panelist to give their presentation, Julia. Julia Adamson is the co-founder of Friends of the Saskatoon Afforestation Areas, one of the organizing organizations of this webinar. Julia, please take the floor. And could you also please return host to me?
Sure. Maybe. I got a couple people to admit here, and here you are. Here. There, you are now host.
Thank you, Julia. Please go ahead.
All right.
Sustainable human-animal interaction.
Wrong one.
When I first heard about the work of the Friends of the Saskatoon Afforestation Areas, I was reminded of a simple truth.
Julia, we can't see your
People
screen.
come together with compassion and respect for all living.
Thank you. Oh, that's weird. Okay, we will try this again. Sorry about that. Go back to Zoom. Go back to Zoom. And I am screen sharing, so I will go here and here and here. So is that better? Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yay.
When I first heard about the work of the Friends of the Saskatoon Afforestation Area, I was reminded of a simple truth. When people come together with compassion and respect for all living things, healing begins. These afforestation areas, once neglected, forgotten, and littered, are now places where nature and humanity are learning to coexist once again. When the Friends first united, the land was forgotten, strewn with garbage, unsafe for people and wildlife. But where others saw abandonment, the Friends saw possibility. Volunteers removed trash from these once abandoned green spaces, restoring dignity to the land and beginning the long process of healing. They worked with law enforcement and the city to ensure that dangerous and inappropriate activities like bow and arrow hunting would no longer endanger wildlife or visitors. What was once forgotten became a living classroom, a sanctuary for life, and a symbol of what care and cooperation can achieve. Education soon became their next great act of stewardship. Through public awareness campaigns, the Friends began teaching how to use these parks responsibly, how to walk gently, leave no trace, and respect the creatures that share this space with us. As wildlife returned, moose, coyotes, foxes, and countless bird species, the Friends shared information on how to live safely and harmoniously with nature, reminding us that understanding is the foundation of coexistence. When a female moose was spotted moving gracefully through the forest, the community didn't panic. They celebrated. The Friends launched a joyful Name the Moose contest, turning the moment into a lesson in respect. They explained how moose are gentle, but must be given space, especially mothers with calves in late spring. They encourage visitors to leash dogs, observe from afar, and remember that every encounter with wildlife is a privilege. This same compassionate approach extended to coyotes, the clever survivors of the prairie. During mating season, the Friends shared messages on how to reduce conflicts, reminding dog owners to keep pets close, to spay and neuter, and to understand that coyotes defend their dens just as we defend our homes. They transformed fear into knowledge and knowledge into empathy, recognizing that coexistence is not about control, it's about balance. They also care deeply about domestic animals in both urban and rural settings. From sharing advice on protecting pets in extreme weather to raising awareness about blue-green algae near wetlands, their focus is on preventing harm before it happens. Their messages reach beyond animals to the health of entire ecosystems. Don't feed waterfowl bread. Pick up after pets and never abandon food or waste that attracts wildlife. Even the bird feeders they maintain are cleaned regularly to protect wild birds while inspiring city dwellers to connect with nature's beauty. Citizen science is another cornerstone of their mission. By encouraging the use of iNaturalist, Merlin, and eBird, visitors become partners in conservation. Over 70 species at risk have been recorded thanks to community observations. Invasive plants and insects have been identified early enough for rapid response. The guiding truth is simple, yet profound. You cannot protect what you do not know. And as the Friends welcome school field trips, they are nurturing something even more precious, the next generation of environmental stewards. These young people learn not only about forests and animals, but about responsibility, empathy, and wonder. It is fitting that the largest of these forests bears the name Richard St. Barbe Baker, who in 1969 became the first honorary life member of the World Wildlife Fund. His vision of reforestation and harmony between humans and nature lives on here in Saskatoon. As we reflect on what the Friends have accomplished, we are reminded that coexistence begins with respect, grows with knowledge, and endures with love. The forests teach us that humanity's future is inseparable from the fate of the living world. As Archive reminds us, forests are home to 80% of the world's terrestrial biodiversity. And here, they are also home to something just as vital, the best of humanity's spirit.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Julia. I especially enjoyed the case study of the coyotes. All right, next I will ask Isaac to please present. Isaac Mena is the program manager for human-animal coexistence with the Africa Network for Animal Welfare based in Nairobi, Kenya. Isaac, thank you for joining us. Please take the floor.
Thanks, Wolf, and good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Here in Kenya is 6 p.m. As you have said, my name is Isaac Maina. I work for Africa Network for Animal Welfare, in charge of human-animal coexistence. I hope I'm clear, I'm audible.
Yes,
Can you
you
confirm?
are, Isaac.
Oh, thank you. So, Africa Network for Animal Welfare is an NGO that works around Africa. We are based in Kenya, and some of the things that we do involve protecting all species of animals, that is wildlife, and also domestic animals, farm animals. So we class across all animals. One of the projects that we do is fighting bushmeat, which is a major problem in Kenya, by going in the bush and removing snares. We also rescue wildlife that have been trapped by snares or in other dangers. We do habitat restoration and work with the conservancies to make sure animals are protected. We do community engagement and also school to unleash conservation to the adults and also to the young people in the schools. We have a program in marine conservations. We have a program that deal with the donkey welfare, especially donkey trade have become a menace in Kenya, leading to decline or a plummeting of species from 1.8 to 1.2 in less than 10 years. We have a project advocating on chicken. We do, when people are displaced and also when there is drought, animals are neglected. So we come in and try to rescue animals that have been abandoned, or during drought. We also do programs that deal with animals in drought. We have a program to deal with the anti-rabies community that live near wildlife areas, faces many challenges, and one of them is rabies. So we do a program of dog population and also anti-rabies vaccinations in those areas. We also do policy in a big way. Policies are very important. So we do in Kenya and also outside. And one of the things that we have done is trying to lobby that animal welfare should be recognized in the United Nations as one of the important components. We do training of law enforcers to ensure that animals, especially animal law, are taken to account through process we call judicial. We engage with the judiciaries and also other law enforcement to talk to them. What is the danger of not prosecuting animal crimes, animal cruelties, and also wildlife crimes? We do also international conferences that we do every year. So far, we have done 7 of them. Next year, it will be the 8 of them that we bring Africa together to talk about the animal issues that faces the whole of Africa. And also we get to invite international presenters also to learn what they do. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. But my main area of specialization is wildlife. Thanks so much.
Right. Thank you so much, Isaac. And thank you for all of the work that you do with ANA to promote the well-being of animals in UN and Pan-African contexts. Our next speaker will be Dr. Kimmy Cushman, who is the campaigner and scientific advisor for Plant-Based Treaty. Kimmy, please take the floor.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'll just share my screen really quickly. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So just really quickly about the campaign Plant-Based Treaty. So, and then I'll get into the science of human-animal interactions in terms of the food system. So Plant-Based Treaty is a global campaign designed to create bottom-up pressure for governments and world leaders to negotiate a global agreement to halt the impact of animal agriculture on the planet. And we operate on 3 core principles that we would expect to be included in this potential negotiation, which are redirect, relinquish, and restore. And redirect is about redirecting resources and education to actively promote a shift towards plant-based food systems. Relinquish is stopping the expansion and degradation of animal agriculture. And restore is restoring key ecosystems and reforesting the earth with the land that's reclaimed to nature by a more efficient food system. And we have teams, we have grassroots teams all over the world and campaigners all over the world that are educating policymakers at all levels of government to implement solutions at the local level that can be scaled up at the country level and eventually internationally. So just getting a little bit into the science. So one thing that is a really helpful framework that we use at Plant-Based Treaty is the planetary boundaries. So the planetary boundaries is a framework that explains the interconnectedness of different Earth systems and how they regulate the stability and resilience of the Earth. And so there's a safe operating space that each system can be operating within, but because of human effects on nature, we've violated 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries so far. So obviously climate change, you might expect, is one of the planetary boundaries that's been violated. Also biosphere integrity, as we've talked about, land system change, freshwater change, biogeochemical flows, which is phosphorus and nitrogen pollution that affects the balance of life, ocean acidification, and then a couple more which have not actually been transgressed, thankfully. But the kind of the key takeaway is that this is a really bad situation that we're in because each of the planetary boundaries on its own threatens the stability of the Earth system and therefore life on the planet. And we're in a situation right now where 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries have been transgressed. And these are interconnected with each other, and animal agriculture is the leading driver of the violation of like so many planetary boundaries. Whereas like, for example, fossil fuel use contributes to climate change, obviously, and then indirectly to biosphere integrity. But animal agriculture is one of the biggest drivers. And so I'll get into that a little bit. So yeah, over the years, the Stockholm Resilience Center has studied the planetary boundaries, and they've been more and more violated as time has progressed. But there's still obviously a chance for us to bring it back into a stable system, but it's going to take a lot of work, in part by shifting towards plant-based food systems, which have a significantly smaller impact on the planet. So a lot of the planetary boundaries come down to the way that we use land on the planet, in addition to the water and the oceans that Wolf was mentioning. But if we actually look at how land is used, this map is a really useful visualization for me that, you know, thinking about how humans have impacted land. So, for example, all the built up area, so that's like all infrastructure and towns and roads and everything, that only represents about 1% of the land that's used around the world. So it's like represented by this. Whereas if we look at cropland used to feed humans, that's about 7%, and cropland and grazing land that's used for animals, for animal agriculture, is 27%. So overall, when you add these up, 83% of global farmland is for animal agriculture, and it's extremely inefficient. It produces 18% of global calories. And so, you know, it's just really incredible when you kind of think about this. This image really sticks in my mind of how much, you know, the demand and marketing for meat and dairy and eggs has contributed to changing the face of the planet for the worse when it comes to the resilience of the Earth. And so when it comes to biodiversity loss and land use change and all these interactions, what we're really seeing and why the planetary boundaries are getting worse is because of the deforestation that's happening and the land use change that's happening for the expansion of animal agriculture. And currently, globally, about 70% of deforestation is for the expansion of animal agriculture. And in the Amazon rainforest, it's actually even up to about 80% of deforestation is for animal agriculture. And this is obviously a huge disaster because not only are, the Amazon rainforest is the lungs of the earth, and rather than being a carbon sink, we're actually creating a carbon source from burning all those trees, but also the Amazon rainforest is currently at risk of forest collapse because of the way that humans are changing the face of the rainforest. And so it's really vital that this deforestation stops as fast as possible. And that means that we need to shift towards more plant-based food systems and decrease the demand for these animal-based foods. Kind of shifting a little bit away from planetary boundaries, but in terms of human-animal interactions, one really important situation that's happening is that the vast majority of animals that are consumed and used for dairy and eggs are being raised in factory farms that are breeding grounds. Obviously, these are horrible situations for animal suffering, but in terms of interactions with wild animals and with humans, these are breeding grounds for zoonotic diseases and potentially new pandemics. And we basically every year, we're rolling the dice with what's going to be the next bird flu, the next swine flu. We kind of expect these things to come out of factory farms. And recently we've seen how many species have been affected here. There's a link to an article I can share the slides about from pole to pole animals being infected with diseases that are coming out of factory farms. And so just to finish, I'll just end on like the positive, hopeful version is that obviously if shifting to plant-based food systems, we would be able to shift away from factory farming completely, but also it's been studied that, if we were globally to shift towards plant-based food systems, we would be able to reduce land use by 75%. And that means we'd be able to reduce farmland, which is contributing to pollution, and we'd be able to reduce the greenhouse gases and be able to kind of restore these ecosystems and protect the wildlife and biodiversity that we already have. And of course, leave space for wild animals to thrive. And yeah, I think I'll just leave it there and we can do more questions later. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kimmy, and for explaining the concepts of planetary boundaries and for giving a helpful visual of the relative uses of land around the world. Our next speaker will be Pei-Feng Su. Pei is the CEO and founder of Acknowledgement. Pei, please go ahead.
Hey, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Good. Just try to get the thing. Thank you. Just some technical issues. Stop. Yeah. Stop sharing. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for the UNEP and Friends of Saskatoon Afforestation Areas and Animal People for organizing this event. And I want to thank you for Wolf to inviting Acknowledgement to join this panel, so to allow me to share Acknowledgement's work in Asia. Acknowledgement is an international charity, and we promote sustainable change, for human, animal, and people, and through our range of the educational program for children, consumers, and professionals. And our award-winning program recognize the interconnectedness for animal, people, and the environment. And hopefully the long-term sustainable change in Asia society will bring more people to understand and appreciate the importance of this interdependency. And so I want to, sorry. Yeah, my post. Can you see? Yes. So Asia's Caring for Life education is awarded by the UN Sustainable Development Goal and the Transforming Education Hub in recognition of its alignment with Sustainable Development Goal, particularly about the SDG goal for quality education and for its scalability and replicability. And this slide shows our curriculum is targeted the children from 6 to 12 years old, which has learned to learn our Caring for Life education program in Chinese primary school. In addition to our 6 years curriculum course,
Hey,
I
think your screen is frozen. It's still only showing
okay.
slide.
Oh,
You want
sorry.
to maybe unshare and then resume sharing? Maybe that'll unfreeze it.
Okay. So So have I stopped sharing?
No, I'm still seeing it. I can stop sharing on your side. Okay, so now you're still, see if you can resume.
Okay, so all right, let me stop sharing. Yeah.
Okay, now we can see it.
Okay, but I now need to go to the present.
Very good.
You can see it now. Okay, so let me restart on this slide. So Asia's Caring for Life education is awarded by the UN Sustainable Goal Good Practice and and also the Transforming Education Hub. And it's recognized is in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goal, particularly about the SDG goal. SDG goal for the quality education and for its scalability and replicability. And this is slides just showing we have developed our own curriculum for the children aged 6 to 12 years old to learn the Caring for Life education program, in particularly for the Chinese primary school. In addition to our curriculum, we also develop enrichment module to focus on specific topics like zero waste, microplastic, climate change, and biodiversity. And so through through this module, the kids can learn these particularly urgent issues through the Earth Day in our enrichment program modules. This year, our biodiversity topic, we develop lesson plan and we host the teachers training webinar to allow school, clubs, and local community to participate, and so we can reach more children. And this year's in our Earth Day event, we have reached 102,000 rural children in China. And so our 6 years curriculum is allow the children to learn the topic of animal, people, and the environment, the interdependency through the 6-year curriculum. And we have this course, curriculum in English and Chinese for the 6 years. The lesson plan, the curriculum also been translated to Sing language for Pakistan and Greek. And the second program I want to share is our Compassion in Fashion Consumer Education program, which is in particularly related to the Sustainable Development Goal 12, responsible consumption and production, and to reduce the demand for fur fashion through our education program. And we focus on the students and the general public. The cruelty to animals and the environmental damage of the fur production in fashion is detrimental. And so by initiating the program with the partnership is really allowing a gradual sustainable change by educating the key stakeholder like the fashion student, the retailers, and also the government bodies as trade association to really understand the environmental damage and also cruelty and abuse of animals, and also how the impact on the people's health, and to particularly in production of the fur industry. Our fur-free retail program also target the Chinese fashion brands and retailers, and to allow them to form the partnership to promote the fur-free life as well. We also produce several publications in Acknowledgement's website to demonstrate our public data, the consumer survey result, and industry report in our website. And I think this is really important for the program to talk about the compassion in fashion, and is to allow more the partnership to form between the nonprofit organization and with the key stakeholders like the fashion industry. And the last slides I want to show is, our Compassion Choice Network, which is organized the Plan Forward campaign every year. And Plan Forward is the first, region-wide Asian-led annual campaign to promote a plant-based lifestyle, awareness of sustainable consumption into the mainstream agenda. And currently, we all know our unsustainable relationship with animals and the environment, and is in all choice of our daily life. And what we really want to try to do is making the sustainable lifestyle and the change through the plant-based living. And so in food, clothing, living, and travel. And so in reality is the Asian have rapid increase in the meat productions and consumption. And that is particularly alarming. And then the population is in 64.5% of the population is in Asia, but we have not addressed this issue in particularly well. So we launched a Plan Forward campaign, and we want to using these Compassion Choice Network to address our concerns. Plan Forward is very positive. With Plan Forward campaign every year launch is using the positive and practical content and to reach the mainstream audience, and not just the vegan and animal welfare organizations or audience. And we also successfully engage with the major consumer brands, and partnership is very important in the heart of this work every year. And we mobilize also the celebrities in Asian region, including, for example, like Olympic gold medalists, to taking part to leading the influence and amplify the reach and normalize the plant-based choice for the first time. And I want to really address this is, the Plan Forward campaign raise awareness of the mutual harm to people and animals and the environment caused by the unsustainable consumption and by humans, and encourage people to really explore the different lifestyle through the compassionate choice. And the compassion is very important concept in the Asia region. Is much more powerful when we were talking about much, a bigger words like rights or a welfare for the public to understand. And in conclusion, Act Asia's program are in line with the Sustainable Development Goals and One Health approach in order to create a compassionate world for animal, people, and the environment. And I want to really, echo what Wolf have said earlier, is prevention is important. So I want to end my talk with the sentence is, Act Asia's work may not be instant gratification, but our power is in prevention through our educational approach and our program in education and public awareness.
Thank you so much, Pei. It's always amazing to see the diverse range of work that Act Asia is doing, including especially sowing positive seeds for the future and educating children. I would now like to welcome our next speaker, Femke Den Haas, who is the co-founder of both Jakarta Animal Aid Network and the Ellis Park Wildlife Sanctuary, in addition to several other projects. Femke, welcome. Please take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I hope you can all see my screen. Can you?
Yes.
Yes? Great. So I'm the co-founder of the Jakarta Animal Aid Network. And sorry, this is my clock. It's midnight here in Indonesia. So this is the clock at the wall telling me it's midnight. So yeah, we started with the Jakarta Animal Aid Network back in 2008. I've been working in Indonesia full-time combating wildlife crime since 2002. And yeah, we are a team of many different people from around Indonesia. We mostly rely on volunteers, and throughout the years we've grown a lot. And as Indonesia is a large country consisting of 17,000 more islands, we deal with a lot of endemic wildlife in need of special care and relocation back to their habitat. So that's why it's very important to work in a network, and that's why also I embedded the name network in our organization name, because it's just very important that we work together with both the government, with both local citizens, that we grow throughout the country, which we have done over the years. So we work with I think the unique thing about our organization is that we work with all species. We don't just focus on combating wildlife crime for endangered species, but we also help animals that are vulnerable or of any, let's say, a lower status. We also help animals like dogs and cats, domesticated animals, because yeah, they're all as important, and it's very important to have a holistic view on animal welfare and biodiversity issues. So we rescue, we rehabilitate, and we also release critically endangered and endangered animals that are often confiscated by the police and then entrusted in our care. We run several centers throughout the country. So we have 6 wildlife rescue centers in different areas. But yeah, we also work with, for example, the long-tailed macaques, who are one of the most exploited primate species in the world. We run different rescue centers. So we have the biggest center is right now in Sumatra, where we also started a sanctuary for animals that are non-releasable, and where we now take care of a lot of animals that actually come from abroad. So we have a big problem in Indonesia now, where the exotic wildlife trade is kicking off, and people are ordering animals from South America, from Africa, through Thailand, to become their pet. And it's because there's loopholes in the existing biodiversity law in Indonesia that still, yeah, gives space for this trade. So this is a big problem we're facing now. Here you see a pangolin, which is world's most traded species for the scales mostly. And then you see a slow loris. These are all animals that are endemic here living in Indonesia. the Javan hawk eagle, which is Indonesia's mascot. But yeah, we deal also with a lot of species that don't belong here and have nowhere to go. And so we also take care of them. And yeah, that means lifelong care. We have a lot of orangutans that come through our centers. But clearly, yeah, we focus on rehabilitation and release. These are sun bears that are endemic to Indonesia and sadly still traded often to become like a pet. But below them you see meerkats, and this was a very special case where we confiscated 1,300 animals from one bus that was passing through the main seaports here between Java and Sumatra. So it shows how big the trade in exotic animals is and how important it is that we work together on worldwide level to fight this trade. Because as I said before, the traders here in Indonesia, they use loopholes in the existing biodiversity law. We run several like specialized programs, for example, for the rehabilitation of eagles, which happens on the islands near Jakarta. And we have a wildlife response team if there are animals in crisis. For example, during COVID, when many zoos collapsed, simply because the zoo owners didn't care or didn't want to take any responsibility for the animals. We also run a citizen stranding response team, so we work around the country in a volunteer network to react to cases of strandings, for example. And we started, and I'm very proud of this project, a world's first rehabilitation project for marine mammals, ex-performing dolphins that were once inside a swimming pool in a hotel. And also traveling around in a circus, we managed to rescue them and rehabilitate them in our facility built in West Bali since 2019. And we're still maintaining this center. Yeah, I think that's an introduction of our work here and the issues that we are facing here in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Femke. It reminds me of my visit to see all of Jan's projects, which I'm realizing was 10 years ago, so I'm definitely overdue to visit again. It's amazing work. Thank you. Next, I would like to invite Adeline Larambert to take the floor. Adeline is the International Policy Manager for the Born Free Foundation.
Thank you, Wolf, and hello to everyone who's joined. So yes, sorry I don't have beautiful slides, but I will focus on the links between animal welfare and biodiversity and the importance of law and policy. So for those who are not familiar with Born Free, we're a UK-based international wildlife charity that was founded in 1984 with a mission to protect wild animals, whether living in captivity or in the wild, to prevent their exploitation and promote coexistence through both science and compassion. So on the ground, we work to protect species and their natural habitats and to empower local communities to coexist peacefully with wildlife. We also have rescue and sanctuary programs where Born Free provides lifetime care for individual animals rescued from suffering, including circuses, zoos, and wildlife trafficking as well. And so at policy level, we advocate for an end to the exploitation of all wild animals, challenging practices such as trophy hunting and the commercial trade in wildlife, but also promoting the importance of wild animal welfare for biodiversity conservation, for public health, and for climate action. And the importance of this nexus between welfare, conservation, health, and climate is being increasingly recognized across not just the global scientific community, but the United Nations system and multilateral agreements. Integrating biodiversity, animal welfare into biodiversity policies creates win-win outcomes because healthy, thriving animals can play their natural ecological roles. So, for example, maintaining soil fertility, dispersing seeds, transporting nutrients, pollinating plants, of course. And these ecological functions are disrupted when animals suffer stress, injury, when habitats are destroyed. And another often overlooked argument is also that animal welfare supports the social transmission of knowledge and culture, as social learning within groups can strengthen population survival and help animals adapt to environmental change. So if you remove individuals from socially complex species, it can disrupt the transmission of, say, foraging traditions, migratory routes, and other behaviors that are essential for population survival. And for example, the UN Convention on Migratory Species highlights the nut-cracking chimpanzees of West Africa, whose groups are distinguished by cultural rather than genetic traits. And CMS also looks at great whales and elephants. And similarly with climate, wild animals can contribute to carbon storage, sequestration, and help with adaptation. For example, large herbivores, bisons, rhinos, elks, when they graze or trample on dry grass, on soil, or on snow, it can help with carbon retention and reduce the risk of wildfires. And finally, for the link with health, animal exploitation increases the risk of zoonotic diseases. A previous speaker, I think Kimi, already mentioned. Because when animals are captured, transported, farmed, or sold in stressful, unsanitary conditions, their weakened immune systems create the conditions for pathogens to spread, including transmission from animals to humans. So for these reasons, Born Free collaborates with international institutions and intergovernmental bodies whose mandates cover wildlife protection, but also broader sustainable development issues, recognizing that wildlife protection cannot be achieved in isolation. So what we want is to ensure that the global, regional, national legal frameworks create an enabling environment for wildlife protection, because such frameworks can turn moral and ecological commitments into binding duties. They assign responsibilities to governments, to industries, to citizens, and they can provide mechanisms for accountability, enforcement, and better cooperation. Born Free is very involved at CITES, for instance, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, which provides the legal basis to regulate and enforce the international wildlife trade. And it requires states to obtain permits for listed species based on how endangered they are. We also engage quite heavily with the Convention on Biological Diversity, which, as Wolf mentioned, adopted the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework in 2022. And parties to the convention are now implementing the 4 goals and 23 targets aimed at halting and reversing biodiversity loss by 2030. And there is a target that we're specifically focusing on, which is on ensuring the legal, sustainable, and safe use, harvesting, it's a horrible word, but it's and trade of wild species. So yes, we are focusing on supporting effective implementation, helping countries to translate these global commitments into national plans and to apply the targets with animal welfare in mind.
Thank you, Adeline, and thank you for explaining more how animal welfare and biodiversity are really directly interconnected, and pursuing one, understanding one, helps to achieve better outcomes for the other as well. Next, I would like to introduce Tozi Zokufa. Tozi is the executive director of the Coalition of African Animal Welfare Organizations out of South Africa. Tozi, good to have you. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Wolf, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all who have joined us. And we thank you, Wolf, and Animal People and other partners who have invited COW to participate in this event. And COW, of course, is the Coalition of African Animal Welfare Organizations. We're based in Cape Town and working largely in the Southern African part. And our mission is to collaborate, network, educate, advocate, and conduct research to improve human and animal lives whilst enhancing the environment and also the communities. But today, Wolf, we really want to focus on one of the aspects that we work on, and that's factory farming. And largely our work is focusing on this arena because the mission really is to play a role in ensuring that factory farms do not set food or foundation on the African continent. It's a large ask, but we are glad to say that we are not the only organization that works on that front. As much as we also work in and around humane education, also wildlife and conservation, but largely the work that we do is to make sure factory farming doesn't entrench itself on the continent. Imagine a world where every burger we eat clears an acre of rainforest, wiping habitats of thousands of species and pumping greenhouse gases into an already overheating atmosphere. And that's not dystopia. It's our reality this very hour, this very minute, this very second. Animal agriculture, the backbone of meat and dairy production, is a powerhouse environmental harm, driving more than 14% of global emissions, more than all transportation combined. It also fuels deforestation and biodiversity collapse, creating a vicious circle with climate change. Today, we just want to focus on that particular aspect. First, maybe the climate connection. Livestock farming isn't just about cows in the fields. It's an immersion monster. Enteric fermentation alone accounts for more than 40% of agricultural methane, a gas that is 28 times more potent than the carbon dioxide over a period of a century. Add manure, feed production, and transport, and animal agriculture hits more than 18% of total global greenhouse gases. But the real kicker, deforestation for grazing and soy feed. Beef production drives more than 80% of Amazon deforestation, releasing stored carbon and amplifying the warming. Globally, agriculture causes 40% of tropical forest loss, turning carbon sinks into sources. If we look at biodiversity, our global food system, dominated by animal agriculture, is the top driver of species loss, threatening between 24,000 and 30,000 at-risk species. Why? The same deforestation. Every second, 1 to 2 acres of rainforest vanish for livestock or feed, extinguishing more than 130 species daily. In the Amazon, home to 10% of Earth's known life, 91% of clearing is for cattle. Beyond habitat loss, pollution from manure runoff creates dead zones in the rivers and oceans, starving aquatic ecosystems. And here's the link to climate. Warmer oceans definitely bleach coral reefs, killing fish stocks already depleted by 90% from overfishing tied to feed the demand. Lose biodiversity, and we lose nature's buffer against climate shocks. If we look at the cycle itself and the way out, these aren't isolated threats. They are tangled web. Deforestation from animal agriculture accelerates climate change, which in turn stresses ecosystems, pushing more species towards extinction. Hotter, drier conditions from emission makes wildfire range through biodiverse hotspots like the Amazon, where soy farms for chicken feed now cover clear land. The result? a feedback loop. Less forest means less carbon absorptions, more warming, faster habitat loss. But transformation offers hope. Shifting to plant-based, regenerative food systems could spare 77% of agricultural land. That's a space for rewilding forests and restoring biodiversity. Why does it matter? Biodiversity isn't a luxury, it's a food security's foundation. Diverse ecosystem yield resilient crops, natural pest control, and nutrient-rich soils, all under threat today. A United Nations report calls dietary change essential. Cutting meat halves land use, slashes emissions by 70%, and lets nature rebound. Regenerative practices like agroforestry and crop rotation build soil carbon, boost yields, and protect wildlife. In conclusion, colleagues and friends, animal agriculture's ties to climate chaos and biodiversity collapse demand action. That action is not demanded tomorrow or next week, but today, now. By rethinking our plates, more plants, less meat, we can break the cycle, restore ecosystems, and secure a thriving future. To policymakers, they need to subsidize sustainable agriculture. And to companies, they need to source responsibly. And us, me and you, we need to start at least with one meat day a week, one meat-free day a week, or meatless Mondays as a campaign. Together, we are not just saving species, we are saving ourselves. And once again, Wolf, thank you for the opportunity for COW to present its work and also the impact of animal agriculture on biodiversity and ourselves and health as well, so that we can all collaborate in ensuring that indeed the work that we are doing on the ground of ensuring that factory farming doesn't set foundation on the African continent, we can do it if we can do it together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tozy, for speaking very clearly, for sharing many informative statistics, and for giving some concrete advice on how individuals and policymakers can be a part of the solution. Thank you. Now, for our last panel presentation, I would like to invite Varda Mehrotra. Varda is the co-founder of Samayu and A Just World, based in India, and has done a lot of very groundbreaking work engaging with community organizations, which connects very closely with the topic of the last webinar on community engagement. Varda, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Wolf. Thank you also, friends of Saskatoon Afforestation Areas, and all the incredible presentations just now. Really inspiring to hear about all the work on how humans and animals and nature can really thrive together. I'm Varda Mehrotra, and we work with both local communities and policymakers. So we work in the space of systems change, but in a way that we are able to show the public mandate and the public support and community support for that systems change, so that systems make choices that protect animals, that restore ecosystems, and strengthen community well-being. And the reason that we focus on food system transformation specifically is because how we are producing and consuming food is one of the most powerful levers, as we've seen through previous presentations, for biodiversity, for animal welfare, and climate resilience. Our main effort, one of our main efforts, is to work in partnership with schools, with local governments, with community institutions, to shift large-scale meal programs toward plant-based options. So these different programs that we have run have already replaced tens of thousands of animal-based meals. And these structural interventions help free up land, save water, cut emissions, and eases the pressure on wildlife habitats. What we do in addition to this is to run public engagement campaigns to show public readiness for this kind of policy change work, whether it is procurement of corporate procurement, or whether it is public policy. The public readiness is something that we are also able to show quite strongly for these sort of policy shifts. And it really demonstrates how communities want and support such transitions also. So the public engagement work becomes the social proof for undertaking systemic transformation. And there are really three main sort of things that come to mind, on this topic. One is food systems are really direct drivers of habitat change. Industrial animal agriculture, as we've seen in different presentations, it fuels deforestation, water depletion, species loss, and very significantly zoonotic disease risks. And while these are outcomes, they also reflect deeper structural patterns in our procurement, in supply chains, in the institutional norms. And those are the things that we believe really need to be transformed with care. Because when these institutions shift their choices, they not only reshape markets, but also cultural expectations, while we build the public mandate for those sort of systemic shifts. So they signal that both communities are ready and supportive for sustainable change, and create conditions for policy and institutions to follow. Secondly, dietary transitions are a very strategic biodiversity lever, because all the shifts that we see in schools, canteens, community programs, through different community groups that we partner with across multiple sectors, environmental, youth, and so on, they reduce the upstream demand for feed crops, they lower deforestation pressure, and build public support for land restoration and afforestation. And the kind of social license that is needed for enabling that ecosystem recovery. And finally, one of the things is that that plant-based transitions are also justice issues. And working in the Global South, we believe quite strongly that system change has to be really inclusive. In India, we work in multiple languages. We partner with local organizations. We work we work by building the capacity of local community groups to understand the local context and work within local cultural frameworks, so that the shifts that are happening, whether at the public or at an institutional systems change level, are mindful of local contexts, and so it can be both equitable and practical towards change. And ultimately, one of the things that I also want to talk about is in the context of, one health and one welfare, because one health and one welfare is something that we are finding quite useful, not just in terms of talking about plant-based transitions, but also in linking the environmental policy and legislation with animal welfare, and animal well-being concerns, which is something that we're seeing as giving us quite good traction with different communities, because it's something that from both a scientific perspective and a community lived perspective and a policy perspective, it's something that aligns together very, very well. So I'll pause there now because I think I've already run over my time, but thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Varda. I think this is an incredibly helpful presentation, and you give a lot of advice and examples that could be helpful for all of us in our various settings. That concludes the panel presentations. Now I would like to begin the discussion section. We are running somewhat behind time, so it may not be as long a Q&A as ideal, but I don't mind going a few minutes over. Anyone who needs to leave right on the clock, please feel welcome to do so. Before starting the questions, I would just like to give a little bit of info on the next webinar for anyone who needs to go soon. The next and final webinar in this year's series will be on the topic of biodiversity and ecosystem resilience. That will be moderated by Dalia Marquez, who works with the Women's Major Group for the UN Environment Program and is the co-founder of Juventud Unida en Acción, one of our co-organizing organizations. It will take place on Monday, November 3rd at 10 a.m. New York time. I would like briefly to thank all of the co-organizers. If you can see my screen, Friends of the Saskatoon Afforestation Areas, Juventud Unida en Acción, Animal People, and the UN Environment Program. With that, we will move on into the QA. I have a few prepared questions, but anyone who is attending, please type your questions if you have something you'd like to ask, and we'll alternate between them. So my first question, proponents of so-called sustainable use of wild animals and wildlife products commonly argue that it helps preserve biodiversity. For example, by reducing demand for poaching or raising money for conservation. Do legal and regulated wildlife trades, for example, commercial trophy hunting or farming of wild species, help to combat illegal trades or otherwise benefit conservation? Or are they also part of the problem? Anyone who can shed light, please go ahead and answer.
Probably allow me to share these. I have probably is one of the oldies among the speakers. I've been working on the animal arena for over 30 years, starting with a wildlife trade. And I want to say this sustainable use really starting early, 90s. And if it has been effective, why are we still, facing such a challenge about biodiversity laws? Sustainable use is a new term, but has it even worked? And so many years when I do the wildlife trade, from ivory to rhino horn to bagel bladders and to hawksbills, all these endangered species, or tiger bones. It's very common when you allow the use. There will be all more to talk about. They want the genuine wild products from the wild. So the commercial use for the captive breeding of wildlife has never really stopped the legal trade. So the illegal trade and legal trade for the wildlife species, in the reality on the front line, is that really I haven't seen successful experience, in particular area like Asia. Just my personal really observation for over 30 years to share with people here.
If I may complement what Pei has just said, yes, the sustainable use model has resulted in the loss of biodiversity, in threatening ecosystems, livelihoods, the economy. 73% decline, I think, in wildlife over the past 50 years. It shows that this model is failing, but sustainable use is inherently complex because of the diverse ethical contexts. What we know is that it should never be used to justify that practices that are clearly harmful, profit-driven. And what we see is this systematic commodification of wild animals under the guise of sustainability for luxury markets, for entertainment and profit. Wildlife use should be conditional. It should be ethically defendable, rare, and not the default or the objective of conservation. And to answer your question on whether legal regulated wildlife trade helps combat the illegal trade, what we see is that the legal trade and legal practices actually perpetuate the demand, because illegality isn't the root cause, it's the demand. So legal trade can mask the illegal trade by enabling laundering and creating consumer legitimacy. So we need to be really careful with our interpretation of sustainable use and sustainability.
Right. Thank you, Pei. Thank you, Adeline. Let's go on to our next question. To a large extent, the major drivers of biodiversity loss can be linked to legitimate human needs. For example, agriculture is necessary to feed people, and expanding agricultural land would seem to be necessary to feed a growing human population. With respect to the various sectors in which each of you work, what are some specific ways in which systems can be transformed to reduce their impacts on biodiversity without compromising human life, livelihood, or well-being?
My name is Julie. I just have a really short comment to make. Richard St. Bar Baker, who we advocate for in Saskatoon here, he is immensely quotable. He says the world's problem is not a population explosion, but an animal explosion. We've got to decide whether we are going to feed animals or humans. To feed animals is a roundabout way of getting food. It takes 18 times more land to feed people on beef than on vegetables, nuts, fruits, and grains. And Richard St. Bar Baker was a vegetarian himself. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Please go ahead, Kimmy.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to answer that question about the population. I had a couple of points. So one is that, going off what Julia said, the current food system is extremely inefficient. And just like remembering that fact of, given the current population of humans, if we were to transition to more fully plant-based food systems, we would be able to reforest and rewild 75% of agricultural land. And so we do have the space. I mean, the damage that we've done, can help be reversed with that. But we definitely don't need to expand more if we really prioritize our resources to actually feed people instead of feeding animals to feed people. But also kind of something I thought of in terms of planetary boundaries and this concept of doughnut economics, which is about rather than seeing, economic systems that prioritize optimizing just infinite growth of GDP, rather to use a different framework which says, what if we optimize our social good while maintaining, while living within the Earth's ecological ceiling? And so there's a safe and just donut where you have the development being large enough to satisfy our social foundation, but not so large that we go beyond those planetary boundaries. And this is a framework that we use the Plant-Based Treaty as well. And there was a recent paper that actually projected the growth of the human population to 2050, I think, for 10 billion, and saying that it is possible. The result of the paper was that it is possible to achieve a safe and just system, which obviously right now is not safe and just. People are hungry and a lot of poverty, but also we're beyond the Earth's planetary boundaries. But it is possible to get back into a safe and just place, even with the growing population. But it requires systemic changes, including shifting towards almost fully plant-based diets. So yeah, that would be my perspective on it.
Thank you, Kimmy. A safe and just donut certainly sounds good. Varda, please go ahead.
Thanks, Wolf. Just wanted to add to that, if you're, say, for example, if you're talking about institutional meal shifts or plant-based transitions, not only is it better for animals and biodiversity and the environment, but it is immensely valuable from a human health perspective, because of all the zoonotic risks, because of the different lifestyle diseases that we are seeing in urban areas, because of increasing animal consumption. We are working directly with our community groups, community partners, and with policymakers to be able to look at local nutrition programs for patients suffering from different diseases, to be able to give them better access to nutrition, which ends up being plant-based food. So that's one part of it. The other part of it to do with livelihoods is also that farmer livelihoods as a result of animal agriculture are not immensely without the subsidy system stacking them up. Farmers also really significantly struggle. We see reports of dairy farmers, for example, significantly struggling in different parts of the country. We find that lots of the conditions in which farmers work, the labor laws, and the workers that are with the labor laws, the struggles that they face. So animal agriculture and animal products from the perspective of human health and from the perspective of livelihoods, we find transitions to be to give net positive outcomes for all of these different dimensions, that we see through our different pilot programs.
Thank you so much, Varda.
And that will just allow me to just have one more injection here is, I think the One Health approach is really important to lots of developing or global South context. The health of the human, animals, and the environment should be brought in when we talk about biodiversity. What Advocacy is trying to do in the region is to allow the public and decision maker and different stakeholders through the partnership or to understand the change with themselves or with the daily actions could have the impact in the biodiversity. Sometimes the words like biodiversity or sustainable development goal is massively huge for the general public or even for the key decision makers. So we need to allow to transforming all these complex technical issues to be more transferable in the daily actions.
Thank you, Pei, for adding that. I will ask one more question, and it will probably be the last one unless I receive any questions in the chat. To what extent are animal welfare considerations represented in existing law and policy relevant to biodiversity, either at the national level in specific countries or in international agreements like the Convention on Biological Diversity? Are there any especially exciting recent developments? And what are the most promising avenues to bolster policy and legislation on sustainable human-animal interactions?
I'm happy to speak a little bit on the international legal mechanisms. And I would say, unfortunately, not that much, but there is some progress with obviously the UNEA 5 Nexus resolution, the IUCN World Conservation Congress has also adopted a number of motions, including one that Born Free fronted on longevity conservation, recognizing the role of older individuals and which kind of goes against the arguments by trophy hunters, to allow killing of older individuals. CITES also has a few requirements that go in the right direction. So on transport regulations, there is a requirement that any animal will be prepared and shipped so as to minimize the risk of injury, damage to health, and cruel treatment. Also a requirement for destinations for live animals to be suitably equipped to house and care for them. And then I would say the main progress that we're seeing overall is at an international level is animal welfare being aligned with broader goals: biodiversity conservation, ecosystem health, climate resilience, and public health. So we're going towards more holistic approaches, including One Health, which should allow sectors to align. And this is reflected in at the Convention on Biological Diversity in a number of decisions, recognizing One Health, and also the role of wild animals in climate as ecosystem service providers. So yes, I think we need to continue efforts to redefine sustainability, to include ethics and animal welfare, and across all these frameworks. And I think there is hope. Stop here.
Thank you, Adeline. I'm glad you were able to share some more detail on this topic. Isaac, would you like to contribute anything with respect to UNEP or the African Union?
Yes, please, and thanks so much. I think the objective behind UNEA was to try to bring animal welfare in the forefront in the United Nations Assembly. But beyond that, I think in the UNEA 5, the discussion are there, the report have been done, is waiting to be presented to UNEA to be whether is a resolution that will be passed. And we are holding our fingers to see whether it will be done. So ANO and other partners worked very hard, and we thank all the partners that came together and saw that it was worth putting animal welfare in the United Nations. But I also had an addition because there is so much discrepancies in law. For example, we have problem of donkey trade in Africa, and especially Kenya. The population have plummeted more than half in several years, less than 10 years. And if it's not washed, we will see donkeys going to an exit. But the problem is not covered at the CITES because it's not wildlife. FAO does not define like how many numbers do we say the population have declined. So we are seeing this loophole that have not been taken to account to an extent that some animals will go to an extent washing because there is no legal framework to discuss about it. And I think UNEA might bring to the light some of those issues that are not covered either in FAO, either in the UAIBA, or either in CITES. And just to mention, in Kenya, we have in wild we have 3 species of rhino: white rhino, black rhino, and northern white rhino. And for example, in our generation, we are seeing extinct of northern white rhino. There are only remaining 2, and they are domiciled in Kenya. They are not found in Kenya, but you only have 2 rhinos. And the most unfortunate thing, they are females, but luckily scientists had taken some semen from the male rhino that died. So we are trying to see whether we can be able to propagate these animals to avoid extinction. So I think it's a very important avenue to discuss those issues and see the loopholes that are there in the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. Varda, please go ahead.
Thanks. Just very briefly, we've been working, besides plant-based transitions with communities and so on, we've also been working in one of the states here on supporting the development of One Health-based policy, particularly in the aquaculture space, and working both with farmers, local scientists, and with the local government to support the development of such. And we've been able to sort of see increasing recognition for fish welfare within using a One Health framework by talking about biodiversity concerns, pollution, especially because pollution is a very big issue for the aquaculture space in India. And we're starting to see some inclusion of fish welfare, within a broader sort of environmental biodiversity and One Health focus policy progression.
Thank you, Varda. That's really good to hear. Fish are so often neglected, both from the animal welfare perspective and in terms of biodiversity and conservation. So thank you for helping to fill that gap. Tozy, please. Tozy, did we lose?
Yes, I was trying to get the mute button, Wolf. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. No, what we've recognized as well on the ground as cow is the growing recognition of animal sentience in law and in also policy, and the inclusion of that. We've also seen it, for example, in the UK and also in Tanzania, whereby you have the actual wording animal sentience embedded in it and in those laws. And we think then that that's a crucial step in ensuring that animals are no longer treated as mere property, but as sentient beings that they are. And as our colleagues have alluded before, that another promising avenue is the increasing integration of the One Health, One Welfare frameworks into the international policy discussions. These frameworks, which recognize the interconnectedness of humans, animals, and the environmental health and welfare, provide a powerful conceptual tool for mainstreaming animal welfare into biodiversity policy. And that's something that as recently as last month at the UNGA 80, the World Federation for Animals was calling for, of which COW is a member of. So we see that there is definitely progress. If you look at 5 years ago, a decade ago, these types of negotiations about animal welfare in high-level policy discussions, they were not featuring as prominently as they are today. So that's another avenue that maybe as the frontiers in this work we should be looking at, integrating the sentience in animal law in different countries. The more countries that recognizes animals as sentient beings, the better for the welfare thereof. Thank you, Wolf.
Thank you so much, Tozy. I'll let that be the conclusion of today's webinar. Thank you to all of the speakers, and thank you everyone who has taken the time to join us and to learn and to share today. Again, the final webinar in this series will take place on Thursday, November 20, at 6:00 p.m. New York time. There is a link to the Eventbrite page in the chat. Please click that if you would like to attend. I certainly encourage everyone to do so if possible, to learn about the role of biodiversity in ecosystem resilience. And my email address is also in the chat. So is the contact info for many of the speakers. Please reach out to any of us if you have questions or would like to discuss further. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you and bye.